Thanks for joining us for today's webinar. I want to go ahead and get started. I'm excited to be joined by our leadership today to dive into GTC and what VAST Presence will be at GTC just next week. Before we begin, I want to share a few housekeeping notes. On the top right, you will see a document section. This has relevant documents to this session. Please go and check those out throughout the session. These will be available to you during the presentation and post-presentation if you want to leverage them following this session. Following this event, we will also be sending out the recording. Keep an eye on your inbox tomorrow for that link. That will include the recording for the partner portal link as well as the slides for this presentation. I do want to call out one specific link in the doc section. We are excited to be sponsoring GTC this year. Feel free to book time with VAST and our joint customers or prospects to talk in person. We'll go through that in a little bit more detail through this session, but we do have some designated space that we're excited to leverage with you all. Lastly, if you have any questions during this session, please put those in the Q&A section. You will see the Q&A panel on the right-hand side of the screen. Your questions will appear once it has been approved. If you'd like to submit your questions anonymously, you can do that by checking the hide name box at the bottom on the panel, which is highlighted on this screen. We want this to be as interactive as possible, so feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation. Today, I'm going to be joined by Phil Menez and Aaron Chasen. Phil, welcome to the stage. How are you doing today?
Excellent. Thanks for having me here. Panel folks, thanks for joining. Excited to be working with the channel again in my new role. And I'm joined today by Aaron Chasen as well, who's our VP of Product and Solutions Marketing. I switched that for you, Aaron. I don't know, for some reason I started with I didn't want to lose the solutions for you, but Aaron and I have worked together since back in the EMC days. He's been a thought leader in tech for a long time, and he's bringing a lot of that great professionalism to the product marketing team at VAST, and it's been great working together. So we're just going to go through the high-level agenda, right? So you guys can read this, but high-level goal for today, right, to kind of give you guys our impression of some of the things we expect to see at GTC, what you guys can expect to see from VAST, and how do we make the most of this event. By the way, both Aaron and I will be there. I definitely have a lot of great partner meetings. I have a lot of great customer meetings, but I will be doing some booth duty as well. So if you guys are going to be there, stop by the VAST booth, say hello, reach out to me directly. I don't know if our contact's here, but phil@vastdata.com. Shoot me a note if you want to connect and talk about how to improve our partnership with VAST. So at a high level, right, we're going to do a very quick sales guy elevator pitch for VAST in the AI space, because you guys are obviously, I think there's no reason you're not getting inundated with AI messaging across the marketplace from storage companies, data companies, all sorts of different companies, right? Everyone now has a message for AI, and our goal today and our goal going forward will be to help you guys kind of distill what's real in the world, where the real differentiations are, what are the real challenges that our customers have, and how VAST is solving them in a unique way. So at a high level, if you're talking to a customer, it's like, why VAST versus company XYZ? Number one, we're breaking down silos both before and after the implementations of AI with our unified data architecture. So if you saw, we recently had an announcement, which is something that a new space I'm learning a lot about is Kafka and real-time streaming data. So even in the data analytics world, you've always had these legacy silos between Kafka real-time streaming data and like legacy batch data analytics, because those require very different things from a data and storage perspective. We've never been able to bring them together. You also have independent environments across enterprise file and object, and multiple different silos in that space of enterprise file and object. So when you look at a lot of approaches to AI, they're kind of building solutions on those silos and maintaining them. And one of the things that we now have the opportunity to do is drive incredible context and correlation across these different data types in a unified architecture. So sum it up, VAST allowing you to consolidate all these different data types and deliver insights across all of them is incredibly valuable, not just from a consolidation and ease of use, but from how do all these different data types work together, because they are all correlated and we don't want to lose the connection between those different data types. We also look at real-time performance. So Vast has had a lot of success in like what I consider like phase one of AI and large-scale training. So we definitely have plenty of performance around real-time from a flash perspective, from a scale perspective. But there's also this concept of being able to ingest and make data available in real time as it's stored onto the platform is going to be a key theme of some of the things that Aaron talks about and what you're going to hear from Vast this week. And then there's so much that we need to solve in the AI space around the security and compliance, right? So really easy example in the file space, it's very easy for us to say that, I can access a file, but Aaron can't. What's much more difficult is how do we make sure that if I'm talking to a chatbot, it knows that I can answer questions about a document to me, but not answer those questions to Aaron, right? And how do I protect and control this data when it's now being delivered through full AI pipelines? So those challenges are things that Vast can solve in such a unique way because of the consolidation we bring in our platform. So at a high level, those are some of the main highlights of the platform and things that you're going to hear across Vast. And the other thing I would say as a bonus, what I'm really excited about on the floor with Vast is that we are solving problems across like the entire spectrum of AI customers. So whether you're building a model, whether you're a service provider supporting model builders, whether you're supporting an enterprise workload that's now trying to bring AI in, or you're a service provider supporting enterprise workloads, we can handle all of those different types of AI customers, and that's rare. To be honest, it's unique. So Aaron, right? Again, thought leadership. There's a lot of awesome stuff I've learned about AI as someone from a storage background trying to enter this new world. And one of the things that I think has fascinated and confused a lot of people from AI and what's changed between last year and this year is like the introduction of companies like DeepSeek and kind of shocking the market from an NVIDIA stock perspective. What's your take on DeepSeek and like how much of an impact is that going to have on AI going forward?
Yeah, I mean, without getting into the technology pieces of it, I think DeepSeek is a big indicator that we're about to see a turning of the page, where what DeepSeek is really bringing in is the ability to deliver AI at 10 to 100 times lower cost, right? This is an order of magnitude or 2 orders of magnitude lower cost to be able to serve inferencing and model training because of the technologies and the sort of the innovations that DeepSeek brought to the industry. I think there's huge value. I mean, they open sourced it, so everybody is now starting to learn from them and apply this, and this is only going to benefit enterprise accounts. So I think what this is really going to be an indication of is, whereas the last year or two has been about investing tens of billions of dollars so that a small number of foundational model builders can sort of outflank each other and try to bring out the next bigger and better language model. That was the competition of how does 5 or 6 or 7, foundational model builders compete. DeepSeek is now saying, all right, but how do I now monetize that and allow mass leveraging of this AI technology? And the cost of doing that has now plummeted. And so DeepSeek, I think, it's been gotten a little bit of press of late is a Jevons paradox moment, right? It's this idea that as the cost of a utility goes down, the utilization of that activity, utilization of that utility explodes. So it's not that we're going to use less GPUs. It's because GPUs are now going to be lower cost to use because of these new technologies, we're going to use more and more of it. So I think you're going to see an explosion of AI across not just these trillion-dollar companies, but every enterprise is now going to be able to afford, especially on the inferencing side, how do I make value out of it? So making a long story short, I guess, I think that DeepSeek has really been a bit of an indicator of we're about to see enterprise AI come into its moment, and we're going to see mass adoption at scale. I think pilots are going to launch this year, but you're going to see mass acceleration over the next year or 2 or 3. And this is a bit of that flashpoint moment. So GPT 3.5 was the flashpoint moment for Gen AI, and it became the beginnings of the massive investments of small number of massive model builders. I think DeepSeek is a similar event that is going to see the democratization of AI take place. And this is just the early days of it.
Awesome. The way I like to describe it in my simple sales guy's mind is like we've been investing a ton in like building all the roads, right? And the early roads, and all of a sudden all these other industries, right? Like we can sell all the cars now, right? And all the things that go with cars, tires and the maintenance over it, right? It's like this was just phase one, right? It was really laying that foundation, and now all of a sudden like we have the opportunity to bring this industry to the masses. So I think you've hit on a couple things, but any other themes or things that you're excited about to seeing at GTC outside of just, obviously what VAST is doing?
Yeah, I think the big themes are going to be kind of along the lines of what I was just talking about. I think the big themes we're going to be seeing this year is how do we actually generate value out of AI. So, and whether that's the shift towards agentic AI and be able to make that affordable now with the lower cost capabilities that DeepSeek provides as an example. I think this is going to be. Last year was this thing called RAG was emerging and some early reference architecture started coming out. I think this is the year that RAG becomes real, and we'll be diving into what we're doing that in the coming slides. There's some new things going on around KV cache to be able to enable large scale inferencing. So whereas RAG is more inferencing for enterprises and unlocking enterprise data, there's how do I do inferencing at scale for some AI clouds. There's some stuff going on around KV cache for that. And then of course, Jensen seems to like to bring robots on stage a lot. So I certainly think that there's going to be more moving into the world of robotics and the different kinds of inferencing models that they're going to be looking to do, whether that's document inferencing, whether that's video inferencing, all the way out to automation and orchestration and things like that for the robotics of the world. So I think this is really going to be a year of how do we make AI useful and possible and applicable to what businesses are trying to accomplish. And then I guess the final piece is this place is moving so fast right now. I'm excited to find out what I have no idea about. Like, what's the new thing this year that nobody's even talking about yet? Jensen likes to surprise people with something each year. So I guess I'm excited to find out also, what's that thing that I didn't even see coming? I fully expect something to pop up unexpectedly.
Got it. So what I took away from it, we should try to sell as much stuff as possible before the robots take over. That's it's my theme for GTC. So no, it's awesome, and it's been great learning about AI through this whole journey, right? It's really fun, and I get so many questions just in the real world where people are like, can you explain what's going on in AI? And my family wants to know, which is fun to be in the middle of this. But main reason people are here, what can we expect to see from VAST at GTC this year?
Yeah, so I'll jump into that. But before I go into this too much, I did want to highlight something that was on that last slide, which was the sort of theme of this year for us. So we're going to be talking about, you see it in the blue letters on the left, architecture matters, all data, all workloads, no compromises, right? So, there's a lot of storage companies out there that do file, block, and object. There's a lot of data platform and data warehouses that do streaming data and tabular data, and there's some vector databases out there. There's no company other than VAST coming into this week and coming out of this week that does all of that in a single unified platform that's architected to be able to do this both at scale and performance. And so that's what really we were going to be highlighting this week, that no matter what data type you want, file, block, objects, streams, tables, vectors, no matter what workload, whether it writes on file, block, object, you name it, we are a platform that can support that at any scale and any performance. So that's kind of the theme that we're going to be leveraging. With that being said, what are the announcements that we're going to be doing? So many of you probably are familiar with Insight Engine. We announced this or announced our intent to build this back in October at our Cosmos event. This is something we've done in partnership with NVIDIA. And the goal here is to be able to effectively productize a RAG capability for enterprise AI, to be able to unlock the value of enterprise data and be able to inference against that through integrating a bunch of different components. We're going to be doing two announcements around this. One is the product itself, and one is going to be a joint venture in partnership with NVIDIA. But I want to kind of talk about what it is and what we just yesterday announced the features that make Insight Engine work, and then we'll get into kind of how it functions. So first of all, what are the problems that we're trying to solve with this? as companies move from sort of pilot phase, I'm going to do my very first chatbot, or I'm going to do my very first, video surveillance, or they've got sort of that pilot project or their first AI use case. As they start to spread that out across the entire enterprise. So marketing is going to use AI, and engineering, and sales, and support, and finance, and you name it. As you spread that across an entire enterprise, a variety of challenges start to come up. So first of all, we want to make sure that we solve the problem of real-time data ingest. So all the other solutions out today use batch processes to convert unstructured data into vectorized data to use in RAG. These batch processes might mean that the data set that you can query could be minutes to hours to sometimes even a day old. That's fine typically if you're doing something like customer support chatbot, where you've loaded all your documentation and it doesn't really change until the next dot release. But increasingly, as we move towards real time, so think streaming data, video streams, think attacks, external attacks through the network, or even agentic AI, where the agents are feeding their results back into the data set for the next agent to be able to query against. We want to increasingly be able to deliver real-time data so that as data flows into the system, unstructured data, it is immediately converted into vectors so that agents and users can query data in real time versus something that's a little bit older through the batch process. The second thing is vector scaling, vector store scaling. If you're doing just a single pilot project, it's perfectly fine to use something like a Milvus or a Pinecone, or any of the other vector databases that are out there. But when you're talking about vectorizing the entire data corpus of an enterprise, these databases simply don't scale from both the scalability and size or capacity as well as performance. Reason for that being current vector databases run in memory. And so you're limited to the scale of the server or a cluster of servers. And of course, as you add numbers of servers, memory is extremely expensive. And also you start getting latency as you spread the database across multiple servers. So we needed to create a brand new way to create a vector database store that can scale up to potentially exabyte scale while still delivering the performance capabilities needed to do RAG operations. And we've solved that by being able to store vectors in our vast database. We'll talk about that in a second. The third one is security. So when you start presenting all of your enterprise data to AI and the many different users and agents that might be accessing those vector spaces, being able to preserve security across all of the different content is critical for compliance and regulatory purposes. And so, kind of as Phil was talking about, if I save a file to my file store, and it's very easy to set file permissions. The problem is that when you vectorize that data, so when you chunk it up and then embed it and put it into a vector store, traditional solutions don't bring the security context of those vectors into the store itself. And so now you start having security and compliance challenges where you can't necessarily easily control who has access to the vectors and the chunks. This becomes a real problem. So we've solved that, again, by being able to save those vectors in our database. We now have a single unified global security context that spreads across all of the data types within a vast platform. I'll talk about that in a second. So those are the three things we're solving for: real-time data, vector scale, and security across all of the different data locations. So we announced just yesterday, if you see our press release, and we'll hear more about it next week, these are the 4 things that we released to support Insight Engine. Serverless triggers and functions allows the vast data engine to be able to effectively make a trigger which says when a file or an object is saved to the data store, automatically take that file or object, invoke or pass that to NVIDIA NIM that will then take that file or object, chunk it, index it, embed it, and then save that all back to the vector database inside of VAST. So basically, as files or objects are created, they are instantly, within milliseconds, converted into vectors and are immediately available for RAG operations. The second one there is the vector store. So we've added the ability to support or store vectors and chunks within the vector database. And so once those are converted in that first process, they're saved into the vector store so that we can then do vector querying as part of a RAG operation. And then the third and the fourth have to do with security enhancements that we did so that security on the files and the objects apply to the chunks and the vectors. So first one is the fine-grained access control. We added both file and row security to our database, so we can now do security all the way down to the individual vector or individual chunk. And then that AI-ready access control in governments basically states or creates it so that a security policy change to a file automatically is inherited by the chunk and the vector associated that file inside the vector space. Again, this way we can guarantee security, whether it's somebody accessing the source file or whether they're accessing that through an AI query. It's a single global atomic security context, and it's super simple and easy to manage. That's going to be one of the key demos we're actually going to be showing in the booth to show how that security context works.
Yeah, I think a couple of things, Aaron, for sales guy perspective here. I think as we look at this announcement, one, I consider it very simply like Vast is productizing enterprise AI in a way that no one else is doing from the scope that we're solving this multitude of problems. As you walk through all the different RAG workflows, that'll become very clear. But the other thing that I think is really interesting about this from the go-to-market perspective is we now have the capability to have conversations with so many different stakeholders. And when you look at like the original phase one of AI, we were always talking to engineers. Now we're going to start to see the multitude of stakeholders in an enterprise that are going to be responsible for these AI projects, right? Whether it's a CIO, a CISO, the engineers that care about the scaling of the vector database. You have a single product here and you can pivot off these different conversations for all the different stakeholders. But to me, I think if you're, hey, I'm some of this I'm so new with, like honing in on this security piece, I think is going to be the one that really drives a lot. And even, conversations I know that we're having a lot with NVIDIA, it's like, this is a problem that is industry-wide, is how to tackle that security piece. So I think if you're a salesperson trying to figure out what's going on, like, I think there's going to be a lot of legs to grappling on to, hey, we know how to secure AI for the enterprise in a different way. I don't think you're going to see a lot of competition that's figured that out in the way that we have anytime soon.
Yep. And I just noticed a question that came in around when is this going to be, the Vector Store going to be available for partners? Just to let you know, what we're announcing this week is that we're basically ready to sell. So we're now going to be, being able to work with customers and do betas of this. The actual general availability of the vector database is going to be later in the first half of this year, so just in a couple of months. That being said, work with us directly. We'll be happy to work with you to get in your labs early versions of this, beta versions, so you can start playing with it. But we're ready to start sharing it now, but it won't be generally available until tail end of the first half of this calendar year. One other comment on the Vector Store. Everything you see on this slide is normally distributed across multiple software vendors to be able to sort of bring together and integrate, whereas we're delivering it on a single system. But we do have some customers that actually are not looking for the RAG, but they do want the Vector Store. So for as an example, there's a very large online retailer based out of California that has literally thousands of vector databases in order to be able to support billions to trillions of things that they're selling online. And so they are looking very much for an exabyte scale vector store that they can use and integrate into their systems. They don't want the RAG. That's not what they're doing. They're doing online selling of all of the different things that are on their store. But being able to use an exabyte scale vector database is going to dramatically reduce not only the complexity of managing thousands of vector databases, but it will allow them to save tons of money on the amount of servers and the amount of RAM that they're using in order to cache those databases in memory. So huge solution for some of these large companies as well. All right, let's move on to how Insight Engine is going to work. Normally this is animated, but I'll walk you through it very high level. This both integrates VAST's data platform as well as NVIDIA NIMs in this version. So it basically allows us to, our VAST data engine will orchestrate and operate this entire process and orchestrate the data flow, both ingest as well as retrieval across both our solution as well as the NVIDIA NIMs. So what you can see here is if I save a PDF file to the data store, the data engine can have a set of triggers that are created that says, hey, if a file of a certain type or with certain attributes lands in the store, take that and then pass that up to the NVIDIA microservices that you can see inside of the green. So it will actually provision the correct microservices based on the content type. A file, a document versus a video versus a sound file versus a genomic file all use different embedding services and chunking services. So we would basically pull the correct service out of the NIM catalog. It'll pass that through a set of services that will chunk it into its component parts, that will index that data, that will vectorize that data, and through that embedding piece. And then those embeddings, the chunks and the vectors get saved back to the VAST database, chunk tables and vector tables in the VAST database. So that's that whole process of file being saved to resulting vectors being saved in the vector database is a matter of milliseconds as it passes it through this system. And they're immediately then available for AI operations. The next slide is then the how do we coordinate the actual retrieval of those chunks. And so you've got your user or your agent in the upper left that does the prompt. The prompt is the set of red lines on the way in, right? So the prompt goes to the VAST retriever, which now needs to retrieve or get a response to that request. So if the LLM has the correct answer with a high confidence, it will return it. If not, then the VAST retriever will coordinate the process of embedding that prompt. So basically taking the prompt from the user, converting that into vectors, then doing the similarity search, which are the red lines down to the bottom, the similarity search to the vector store and the chunk tables. It will also do a conversion of that query from text to SQL in case there's structured data in the SQL in the data warehouse that it can pull from. The resulting responses get passed up to a re-ranking service provided by NVIDIA NIMs, which then takes all of the possible answers from the vector database and determines what's the most likely correct answer, passes that information back to the large language model, which then turns that back into human form text that we can read, which then gets passed back on to the requester. That process could take, seconds to process. And if you notice, the VAST data engine is really the tool that is coordinating all of this operation. So again, leveraging our back-end storage platform and database technology, but coordinating all of the different NVIDIA NIMs required to do the large language model, the embedding, the retrieval, and re-ranking systems, and managing this all as a single unified platform. So that's basically what Insight Engine is going to be enabling customers to do. We're going to be doing multiple demos in our booth around this, or multiple sessions. We'll be talking about this in depth. And this is something that is also going to be highlighted by NVIDIA throughout the event as a joint initiative that our two companies have worked on together. Can't talk today about who the named accounts are that we'll be talking about, but we've got a customer that's going to be highlighted that's leveraging this to be able to drive business value for their organization. Anything you want to add to this, Phil, before I move on?
So I think there's a question here, which is, I think we'll have to, you have to decide how much we can say about it. But where are the NIMs running? So it says CSP or hosted on-prem. So on-prem, but how do the NIMs come into the platform? I think is something that
Sure.
people want to understand.
Sure. So in the first iteration of this, so the release that we're doing right now, it's bring your own Kubernetes cluster, and the NIMs would run on that cluster, and then we would then do all of the orchestration of that. So we would do all the orchestration of the provisioning and the passing off of the chunks and the vectors to those microservices. But you basically bring your own server. In a future release later this year, we will actually also provide the Kubernetes cluster. You get the hardware through your hardware vendor of choice, but we would provide the Kubernetes components to this. So you'd have a choice, bring your own or use our distribution. But these would run on an external server in an on-prem or in a colo type facility location. We also I didn't mention it, but I'll mention now. We will also be doing a converged platform version of this that we'll be announcing at GTC in partnership with NVIDIA. So that would be an vast Insight engine with NVIDIA DGX. So in that case, everything in the green box would be an NVIDIA DGX server. And then we would be able to deliver this as a converged system between both NVIDIA and VAST.
Yep. And by the way, so I said on-prem, but we also do have a large, vast service provider network as well, right? And we are working, a lot of our early service provider customers were supporting training for large language models, but now we are working with many to develop inference as a service offerings for the enterprise. And I don't know if you want to use the next slide or talk about it now, but one thing that we are seeing a lot, and I think is, confusing for a lot of folks, especially ones that don't work as fast, is there's so many RAG reference architectures that are out in the wild now. What are highlight really quick main differences between what you get from a generic RAG reference architecture from, storage company XYZ versus what you get from VAST?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest difference is the fact that in all of the other ones that we've seen from other vendors, they typically are basically blueprints or reference architectures. So you've got maybe storage from one vendor and networking from a vendor, and you've got the servers that you're going to have, and then you got to pick your vector database, and then or the vector database that they've recommended. You've got to use the microservices that you pull in, but it tends to be sort of a recipe but you still need to get all the ingredients from a variety of different vendors and then cobble them together or integrate them on your own or through obviously community partners help with the integration piece as well. But at this point, it's more of a how do I pick from across this technology landscape to cobble together a RAG solution. What we've done is integrated all of that into our platform. So we deliver the storage services, we deliver the database and data warehouse services, we deliver the vector database services, we deliver the orchestration tools that coordinate all of this process so that it works in real time and it coordinates the operations of the data side of the house with the embedding microservices side of the house, or the microservices of the NIMs. So we've really turned this from a recipe to sort of a full-blown here's the cake, you go ahead and have it, right? So we're delivering this as more of a much more unified, purpose-built turnkey system, especially when you get to the solution that we're doing with NVIDIA with the DGX converged platform. That truly is a turnkey system, so it hits their site, it's fully integrated before it even gets there. I think that's the main difference. And this slide here, I won't read through these next two slides. It's a lot of words. You guys are going to have the deck, but we did want to provide some high-level positioning of who's the target audience that we're going to be going after. What are some of the key challenges of scale and cost and complexity? What is our solution, right? Where it's a real-time AI processing and retrieval platform. We'll probably put the term turnkey into there as well. What's the compelling reason to buy? What's the competition, which is more batch processing, fragmented storage solutions, costly manual integrations across all those technologies, as I mentioned, and then the vast unique differentiation. So this is one that you can kind of look at, and it's 5 or 6 sentences to get you who are we going after, challenges, solution, why you want it, how is it different. The next slide kind of dives into a little bit more of the messaging here. So the pillars of the messaging of this is it's real-time data, so you can access data instantly as it's created. It's scalable to exabyte scale and beyond. It's secure across all data types and across both source data and your vectorized and chunk data. And it's extremely efficient because of this integrated turnkey system. So again, if you want to read these and get some idea of kind of the messaging statements behind it, we'll do this as a leave behind. You'll get the slides and you can use these. I'm looking at the question. If it's all real-time data ingestion for RAG, when and how is all the PII and, sorry, I got to read more, proprietary data filtered out before being vectorized? Good question. So that's really done as part of the triggers and functions. So if there's any particular data that you do not want to ever get vectorized, then in the trigger piece of the data engine, you would simply filter out for data types or content types that you don't want to have vectorized. That being said, if you do end up vectorizing it, as long as the permissions are set correctly on the source data, those are automatically inherited on the vector side. So even though that data may get vectorized, if you do not have permissions to access that PII, you will not have the ability to access that through a search. That being said, not everybody is going to trust that. So if you simply wanted to filter that out as part of the prep side of this, you would do that as part of the triggers and functions, and you would set that as a policy to say this type of data, simply don't pass it on to the microservices to do the embedding. All right, let's move on to the next piece. So there's a lot of companies that are kind of leveraging VAST. I should take a step back. Some companies are looking to leverage VAST to be able to accelerate AI projects that they know that they're doing. The vast majority of enterprise customers today, however, are really looking to start modernizing their infrastructure to be able to run their data on systems that are AI ready. So they can serve their existing file block and object-based applications and workloads. And then at some point in the future, when they want to unlock the value of that data, it's already sitting on a system that can automate that data pipeline process. And so a lot of companies kind of are using us for that purposes. Companies like Pixar or the National Hockey League, and there's many others, are examples of this. So Pixar, for an example, they wanted to make it really super easy to be able to store all of their high quality, video content into a extensible data store, and be able to also give that access to their video editors wherever they may reside. So I might be doing production work in one physical location, but then be doing my editing or other work in a secondary location. So VAST gave them the ability to have an exabyte scale data store to store all their videos, but that VAST data space gave production users the ability to access and manipulate those files from any physical location. So that was the original use case, was really a file consolidation platform for distributed video editing at scale, very high performance for all of the all of the compute that needs to happen to render all of these videos. But and NHL did that as well, right? They took all of their historical video footage for the history of the NHL and they put it all into a single exabyte scale system. They also put these stores in each of their arenas so that real-time data feeds could be fed in and have access via the data store. In both of their cases, they then want to say, okay, well, how do I now start doing AI data operations against these? So the Pixar example is, Pixar was doing this to be able to produce movies, but then Disney came to them and said, hey, we want to actually index every single animated video we've ever done in the history of Disney so that we can start doing, analyzing and leveraging that for AI generation purposes. So can we have a copy of your data? And what Pixar basically said was, rather than giving you a copy dump of all of that, literally hundreds of petabytes of video data, they just said, here's access to our source files. Go ahead and just access it over on the same vast system so we can access the files to do the work we're doing on our movies. You can access those exact same things to do AI and analytics against it. And so this is an example of companies that used us for traditional enterprise consolidation use cases, but then because it was already on a platform that could enable AI pipelines, they didn't have to move or copy or shift that data through to a different silo to do AI operations. They could do both their production as well as their analytics against the same data on the same platform without performance or security challenges in place. So this is just an example how a lot of enterprise customers are simply using us for day-to-day enterprise IT operations, but are putting them into a competitive position so that when they're ready to do AI, they don't have to bring in new systems or new technologies to make that shift.
Yeah, I think something that I experienced at VAST was right when ChatGPT launched. There was like this mad dash for people and organizations in the enterprise to show like they were doing something with AI, and a lot of them went out and bought GPUs, and they're like, we're going to buy a bunch of GPUs, and then they landed and they didn't really know what to do with them yet. And so there's like all these kind of like I consider orphan super pods out in the world where there wasn't really a use case. And I think organizations weren't sure, like, are we going to train models? Are we not? But we got to like show progress. And I think what we've seen is that the customers that took step one to start modernizing their data environment on something like VAST, that they're in a much better position to make progress. And now that these use cases and the models have been built, it's very easy for them just to plug them in on top, versus if you say, hey, today I'm going to go, even if I wanted to go train a model, like how are you going to get that model to your data? So like there's a real credible story to say step one for any customer while you're figuring out your AI strategy, just start moving your data. And that means like step one from a sales perspective is like, we can go just swap out a bunch of legacy unstructured data storage platforms and help our customers understand like this is the most effective thing you can do towards getting to a world where you have AI access to all your data.
All right, I'm going to wrap up, I think, my piece with a couple more slides. So what should you expect at GTC from us? First of all, we've got a 20 by 20 booth. It's actually pretty good sized as they come at GTC. If you move in, it's sort of on the left side of the expo space, right next to Cisco and Lenovo and HPE, just kind of slightly to the left of NVIDIA, but it's right on the corner of two main hallways, so we should be very easy to find tucked into that location. We've got a bunch of giveaways, lit up cowboy hats, which I guess is a huge popularity in the past. We're bringing those back, so hopefully we see them all over the place. Our event space has 3 demo pods that are two-sided, so we'll have basically six demo pods available to be able to showcase what we're going to be talking about. So what are those demos? You can kind of break this into 3 kind of groupings. There's sort of VAST 101. So there's going to be the ability to show the VAST data platform at a high level. What is it? What are the components? And give them sort of a tour of the UI of how to manage the system. There's going to be an observability demo. So how do you actually use this to be able to provide usability and performance and troubleshoot any contention, or basically use the tools within the system, and or how do we link via APIs to third-party observability tools. There's going to be a bunch here focused on inferencing. So the VAST Insight engine with NVIDIA. Real-time permissions control for RAG. So when I talked about being able to maintain security permissions between files and their related chunks and vectors, we'll have a demo to show that in action. We're going to have a video RAG demo, so a use case around video production of how would you basically chunk and create a vectorized store of all of the video content of a particular video stream or so forth, and then how would you use an LLM to intelligently query that. And we'll also be doing some agentic AI as part of that piece. So a secure remote RAG would be able to be, how do I securely query against a vectorized data store from a remote location? So sometimes you want to query from a secondary location back to your source data. How would you make sure that that security context passes across? And then we're going to do a couple around AI model training, especially focusing on sort of the trend towards synthetic data. So these are the pieces there. The high focus is really going to be on that inferencing operations, and what we're doing with Insight Engine will be the main focus of these. But any of these will be available across all 6 kiosks or booths. Okay, I'm going to pass it over to Christina to talk about some of the other ancillary things that we're going to be doing at the event.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. So out of all the great things that Aaron and Phil really talked about through this session, I wanted to kind of go over some additional opportunities we have for our partner ecosystem. We do have some meeting space available outside of the venue at the Grill and at Morton's that's available for our partners to leverage with both our joint customers and our joint prospects. You can kind of see here where they're located in relation to the venue. I believe it's about a 5 to 6 minute walk to either venue. The Grill we have a full buyout of from Tuesday to Friday, and Morton's we have a partial buyout of from Wednesday to Thursday. We do have designated meeting space available for parties of 4 up to larger parties up to 20. If you would love to use this meeting space, feel free to reserve time with VAST. We'll have our technical team as well as our executive team on site. You can use the link over in the doc section to book a joint meeting. Again, this is to be used for customer and prospect meetings. So I definitely would encourage y'all to take advantage of that. Okay, last couple things I'd like to share with you guys. Ancillary events. We have a lot going on at GTC this year outside of our booth presence that we wanted to share with you guys. These are customer specific events, so feel free to invite your customers or prospects to these events. Again, this link is linked over in the docs section, so you can go in there, send the link over to customers and prospects and have them register, learn more about the events, locations, times, customers we're featuring at these events. But we do have a lot going on, from breakfast to lunch to dinners, that you can see here on this slide. Okay, last thing I'd like to cover is speaking sessions. We will be at GTC with a few speaking sessions. You can kind of see here what we'll be chatting about. We do have an on-demand session that's also available. If you are attending live, feel free to go in and check out the on-demand sessions. I know there's going to be a lot of great content on there as well. Otherwise, we do have some in-person sessions that you guys can attend as well. We'll be sending out this deck following this presentation, and will also be available on the partner portal. So feel free to reference these things following this session. Okay, I do want to give a little bit of a plug before I invite Phil and Aaron back on stage for any last minute Q&A. We do here Linked have a kind of a sandbox environment within our Cosmos community. This is a great opportunity for prospects and customers to kind of try VAST themselves. So feel free to check this out for you guys and your teams, but also share it along with your customers and prospects as well. So I want to invite Phil and Aaron back on stage for any additional questions. If there's any additional questions that you guys have about what we chatted about today, or VAST GTC Presence, feel free to pop them over in the chat. I'll give you guys a few moments. I know Aaron and Phil did a great job kind of answering those questions throughout. Hi, Phil. Hey, Aaron. I know you guys answered a lot of these questions throughout. I haven't really seen anything trickle in additionally. Is there any last minute things you'd like to cover while we give folks a few minutes to put some additional questions in the Q&A?
I mean, I would just add, obviously we're here to help at any time, so please feel free to reach out to either of us. Obviously come by the booth, and then the two ancillary locations that Christina talked about. So we're happy to help any of you at any time. If you want us to chat with your customers, we can make that work. And I know that Christina mentioned it, but to connect with, engage with us on site, make sure the directions are in that document section. But let us know how we can help.
And I think the other thing leading up to the announcement, I'm really excited about the announcement we're going to make, and showing, again, I think for such a long time the impact of AI has been so abstract that we've got a really cool customer announcement that I think will resonate with pretty much everybody. But ultimately, that's just an example of what we can do with one type of data, and there's going to be so many offshoots of that. And I think for VAST, what I'm excited about from our partner community, there's going to be a lot of opportunity to layer on services and consulting from a perspective of like, what is the right use case for this customer? How do we identify that? Building applications on the platform. A few years ago we were straight storage, and now we're really at this point when you can really start to build apps on the platform, run apps on the platform. So I think there's a whole new level of opportunity for our partners to add value around the platform in a way that really wasn't possible before. So we're looking forward to hearing your ideas. I've been having some cool early conversations with partners under NDA about the announcements and what they think they can do. So you all have different vertical expertise in other areas where you're much closer to the customer's business challenges, and we can help provide that data pipeline, right? So there's definitely the gap between business value, data pipeline, and that's where I see our partners coming in. So I'm excited about having those conversations coming out of GTC, and definitely excited to work with you guys on how we bring these AI projects to life.
Great. Thanks, Phil. Thanks, Aaron. I haven't seen any additional questions or comments come in. So I think it's safe to say we can give some folks some time back in their days. I know everyone is getting ready and preparing to travel next week for GTC. So we're really looking forward to seeing everyone next week and appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us today.
Thanks, folks.
Thanks, everybody.